Whatever path you were on, whatever inspired you to come here today, we honor you and we welcome you. And now, our message.
Stay with me in that place for just a moment. I'd like to begin with an evocation, just a calling to our inner selves to be centered, to be here, to be aware, to be awake, to be in love, to be all that we are, and to know that we are beautiful and that we are loved. Take a breath into that and just know it's true. You can feel it in your heart, in the center of who you are, in that small light that is your wisdom. It's the center of your presence. You are the closest to yourself, to your God, to your spirit, to whatever it is. It is that love, that peace, that calm, that joy, the truth of all universe. And in that place, this is where we learn, we grow, and we are all that we can be. Because we are that now. And our eyes are open. And we are aware. How could anyone ever tell you anything other than what you truly are? Know it. Own it. Love it. Be it. So it is. I often and reluctantly play that song because I love it, but it makes me very emotional. We have a guest speaker today. I met her this morning. Quite a wonderful person, and I know you'll enjoy the talk today. I have to read a little bit about her, just so you know who she is. Dr. Janeen Detrick is a personal development coach. She has studied theology at the Baptist Bible College in Missouri. She received her Bachelor and Master's of Sciences degrees through the University of Metaphysical Sciences. She obtained a doctorate through the Minnesota University School of Metaphysical Sciences and her PhD in transpersonal counseling. She's the owner of the Good Vibrations Energy Clinic down in Salt Lake City, and she has recently studied at the Oneness University in India, where she became a Oneness trainer and also has added Diksha blessings to her many, many modalities of healing and teaching. Now, I said this in the morning session, and it's true. I wasn't kidding. I thought so much for someone so young. And it's true. I thought, she's been a busy lady. She's very driven and very on point. And I would like to have you help me welcome Dr. Janeen up here for our message.
And the claim which touches my heart the most is that I get to be part of you. I love you all already. This has been amazing already. Boy, that song is very emotional, Lyle. Ooh, wow. I love it. Every time I hear it, it inspires me to remember who we really are and whose we really are. We are coming into a beautiful time of year, the celebration of Christmas. Isn't it a great time of the year?
Yes.
It's like the whole world is filled with this energy of blessing and joy and friendliness. It's just so delightful. And today I get the opportunity to present to you a few thoughts which I hope will inspire you to consider on an even deeper level the Christmas story and that which the Christmas story can teach us about who we really are and all of the ways in which we too are creating everything manifested in our life experience. We are not unlike Jesus Christ. Jesus, the man, knowing who he really is in his Christ consciousness, manifested all of the aspects of the Christmas story. How many of you know enough about it that I don't have to tell you the whole story? Okay. Okay. It just so happens that my path toward consciousness raising and the realization of who I really am has been the classic religious devotee. I lived it completely. I was completely immersed in one right way to be thinking in every religion I was ever in. I always thought I was the only right way. Well, in that study, as I devoted myself fully, what I discovered is that every path really does lead to God, and they're all good. They're all good. They all work, every single one, because my father was a Baptist preacher of the conservative Baptist sect. And in that tradition, I studied the Bible all my growing up years, and you know what? It didn't hurt me a bit. It didn't hurt me a bit. But as I would spend time in devotion, studying the Bible, what Spirit was bringing to my awareness as I read was something much more than only that which I was hearing being taught. So I began to raise new questions. And then, when I went to Baptist Bible College in Springfield, Missouri, studying Hebrew because I thought I needed to rush off to be a missionary to the Jews to save them all from hell, I realized, oh my goodness, there is no hell. It's a state we put ourselves in when we believe we're guilty of something. And with that realization, I knew there's nothing to save them from. They already are saved. They already are that. And in that tradition, as I studied those traditions, the Jewish traditions, and studied Hebrew, I began to see so much more in the scriptures. And my understanding began to be quickened because our dear friends, our Jewish friends, interpret the scriptures in their Torah on at least 7 different levels. In so much of modern Christianity, not necessarily ancient Christianity, but in so much of modern Christianity, the interpretation of what we read in the Bible and of the life of Jesus is only taught on the literal level. But you and I know, we've come to know, that everything we see on the literal level started as what? An idea, an inspiration flowing through us in our divine creative capacity. So the literal level is only a manifestation of that which is the true spiritual, metaphysical, allegorical, and as a parable, those meanings. So when we look at the scriptures on more levels, with more perspectives, we find much more in it. So let's move into looking at some of the aspects, as many as we can get to in our allotted time, because literally, couldn't we just talk about this for the rest of our lives? And never it would be finished, because we would continue to see more as we dive into it more deeply. But the birth of the historical Jesus, who became the Christ, as he grew in consciousness and awareness of who he really was as a divine being, this story in the Bible teaches us way more than meets the eye. Everything that we see in our physical life is first an idea, an inspiration, which is energy that we, receiving as it wells up through us and in us, then can manifest in physical form. Jesus was not unlike us. Jesus, the man, through his beingness, through his awareness, before he ever incarnated in the lifetime that's recorded in the 4 Gospels in the New Testament, before he ever incarnated, his beingness, the consciousness and presence of who he really was busy creating the physical manifestations that we would then read later in the Christmas story. Jesus' identity itself was a subject he brought up as he discussed with his disciples, "Who do men say that I am?" Indicating that the people of that day believed in reincarnation. Because why would he raise the question? Who are people saying that we are? Who are people saying that I am? Indicating that they already had an awareness that he was a being before he manifested in this form. So, Jesus in John 17:16 says, as he teaches us about our identity, which is not unlike his own, "Ye are not of this world, even as I am not of this world." John 10:30 and 34. "I and my Father," the divine creative capacity, "are one. As I said, ye are gods." Philippians 2:6. The Apostle Paul teaches the followers of Christ who lived in Philippi, "Jesus thought it not robbery to be equal with God." Well, he was born as a man. He was very well aware as he grew into that awareness, because the scripture also says he grew in wisdom, stature, and strength. Just like us. Isn't that good news? I don't know about you, but I wasn't really born knowing that about myself. I thought I was this wicked sinner in need of some kind of correction, right? So, as I was able to be raised in consciousness and see it differently, I began to realize that Jesus growing in stature and strength and wisdom indicates that I can too. And that is what we're all doing, right? We're all increasing in our wisdom and our awareness. As we get in touch with that divine flow, then we can manifest in this temporal world the way he did. He even said that, "Greater works shall you do if you have faith." Itsy bitsy little amount of faith, the size of a grain of mustard seed. I also think that's good news, that he tells us we don't have to have perfect faith. Don't you think that's good news? So that when the ego tries to make you doubt who you really are and tries to tell you, "Oh no, it might not work out," we can be restored to awareness that, hey, if I have hope to believe, that's faith enough to send the energy out to the universe to create it the way that we are choosing. So Jesus' identity, since it was a question he himself raised so that the people would ponder it and think about it, was also the subject of a George Norrie Coast to Coast program that I listened to and have the recording of from August 21st, 2013. Have you ever heard of George Norrie and the Coast to Coast AM program? Oh, I just love that. There's so much good stuff in there. He's brilliant. What a divine creator George Norrie is. I just love hearing him and all of his guests. On August 21st, 2013, the guest, George Clark, talks about the book that he did 18 years of study to bring into fruition. His book called A Synopsis of the Book of the Atrahasis. Now, the Atrahasis details the account of an ancient people in the East called the Enki, E-N-K-I. The Enki people were a Gnostic, that means knowing, internal knowing, a Gnostic group of mystics. Isn't it interesting that in the New Testament, the three magi followed the sign of the star, and these three magi were from Persia, where this ancient Enki people happened to predominantly reside. In this book of the Atrahasis, it is detailed that the Enki people were so highly evolved in their consciousness and awareness of their divine creative capacity that they would perform a dying to live ritual that through the setting of their intention would actually quicken the creation of a fetus, and they would imbue that fetus with the energy, the life force energy, to have a Kundalini consciousness raising experience from the time they're born, to experience it very quickly. So it's not a surprise that in this account they performed this ritual in order to bring about the being Jesus being born for such a time as this, so that we could have an example how we too can grow in wisdom, stature, and strength, and remember who we really are and our divine creative capacity, and bring healing to the world thereby. These magi from the East would have known, since they performed this ritual, they would have known when the physical birth would have taken place. And they created the signs through their intention to create the signs. Now, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the being Jesus, before he manifested in this life, actually, it is plausible that he was there amongst them at that council. That his being could have been there amongst them at that council when they were performing that ritual. So he too was part and parcel of creating the signs under which he would be born. You know, so often we look at the stars and we think that's the way it is, don't we? We look at the stars, we look at the universes that are created. We study the science of it, but you know what? Science can only report on that which we have previously created. They can't tell us the way it is. They can only tell us how we previously created it. And then they report on it. So the astronomy of the day in which Jesus Christ was birthed into this particular incarnation described in the New Testament, he himself was part and parcel of creating the sign, together with the Magi, who then showed up for his birth. Isn't it also interesting to ponder that they still perform these rituals today, and there are many, many spiritual masters who are said to have come from a virgin birth? With these rituals still being performed, why can we not create anything we choose? Of course we can. Through the focus of our energy and intention upon it, we can bring it into manifestation. And so did they. They chose to have this being birthed for such a time as this under the sign of the star. Let's take a deeper look at some of the other manifestations in the Christmas story and what they might mean. I like to first think about the fact that Christmas is a tradition. It's a tradition we keep. How many of you bring out your same ornaments every year and eat the same food, right? What does this say to us symbolically and metaphysically beyond just the physical interpretation of that? I think the fact that we continue to honor tradition is representative of the fact that consciousness raising of who we really are is an ancient memory. It is an ancient memory within us that wells up and lights upon our minds, enlivening and quickening us so that we can then move forward in the world in a powerful way to influence everything, remembering its origin and its source. So the very fact that it's a tradition symbolizes it's a remembering of who we really are. Joseph and Mary represent wisdom. Joseph represents wisdom, taking care of the physical, temporal life experience. Because Joseph, we know, was not the actual spiritual father, right? He was the physical stepfather. So he was taking care of that which is here in this world, the things of this world, because we do have to take care of the things of this world, don't we? And taking care of it in an orderly, respectful manner is symbolic of the fact that God is a God of order. That energy we have come to personify as God, there is an orderliness to it. So Joseph represents wisdom and taking care of the temporal things of this world. Mary represents love. She was the conduit through whom that manifested form could come forth. Love. Love is always the conduit, isn't it? Love is the creative energy. Love carries the vibrational frequency that creates everything. Mary represents being that conduit, the love which brings forth manifested form. Every aspect of the Christmas story has much deeper metaphysical meanings. Galilee, the city of Galilee, means to whirl. The word itself means to whirl. There are still whirling dervishes in the East, aren't they? And what this represents is the stirring of the creative energy of the universe, the stirring of the life force energy. In some traditions, they call it ki. In some traditions, they call it chi. It is the stirring, the whirling of the life force energy. That's why the city was called Galilee, to whirl, the whirling of the life force energy, which brings forth all manifested form. Nazareth, the place where Jesus was said to be from, where his clan was from, the physical family into which he was born. Nazareth actually was a city that was despised and rejected. The people were said to be less than. Nazareth represents, because it was the place where Jesus Christ came forth from, represents the sexual center. And our judgment against it. And in judging it to be bad and wrong, that which we have created as an expression in physical manifested form of our divine creative capacity, judging it to be bad and wrong, we as a collective have even created STDs. And some of us suffer thereby. I'm so happy to report that I believe I see a shift in consciousness and we're not judging it as being bad and wrong so much anymore. Aren't you glad about that? And then we can end that suffering that our brothers and sisters are experiencing because of our judgment of our divine creative capacity. Nazareth represents that judgment and being despised and rejected. Judah represents praise. The house of David represents the place of love and nourishment. The word Bethlehem means bread. Physical manifested nourishment. Bread. This is also why Jesus was referred to as the bread of life. He showed in physical manifested form our nourishment as divine creative capacity. Bread. That we are physically sustained. Mary also represents willingness, because she, even though it could have been looked down upon in that day and age, in that society, she was willing to do that which was outside of the norm and carry this child who was, through energetic impression, conceived within her like They believed all the masters were. There are many masters who are said to be of a virgin birth. She was willing to go through what could have been humiliation in society. Willingness to be a conduit for divine flow, even when it isn't popular. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. Of course, the virgin birth itself represents for us that we are innocent. We are innocent and powerful in our divine creative capacity. There is no guilt to be forgiven of. The divine energy, that pure intelligence that is in everything and is everywhere, does not judge or assess how we choose to use our divine creative capacity. We can do whatever with it we want. Even looking at something and calling it bad and wrong is a judgment, which in itself could be said to be bad and wrong, right? So judging how a person uses their divine creative capacity is not something the divine would ever do. The divine is our divine creative capacity. That judgment of how people use their divine creative capacity is actually represented by Herod. Herod represents the thought of separation, the ego, the thought of fear, the thought that we are bad and wrong and we are less than. The ego always tries to crucify the Son of God. The ego is represented by Herod in this story. He was afraid that he would lose something, or there's something he would not get, being the king of the people. And that state of fear is what the ego is. The thought of fear, the thought of something we might not get or could lose. The thought of separation, the thought that you're over there and I'm over here and we're different, instead of recognizing our oneness. That is represented in Herod and in Herod's role. The ego always lies to us and tries to tell us that we're not something, doesn't it? Tries to tell us there's something we won't get, tries to tell us there's something that might go wrong, tries to tell us what we're not. Herod represents the ego. Conversely, the angels, the messengers of light, represent that divine spark of internal knowingness that wells up inside of us and gives us the message of who we really are. And then when they simply returned to their flocks, that represents, we sometimes dismiss that internal knowingness, don't we? We sometimes dismiss the energy of light that wells up within us from that heavenly messenger, as represented in this story through the angel. The star in the east. Stars represent new beginnings because, we are continuously creating more. The Heisenberg principle, in fact, in quantum mechanics, even teaches us and shows us that when we look at the stars, we change them. When we look at anything, we change it through our very act of observing it. That's not even theoretical physics anymore. It's now hard science. There's so much evidence. So the fact is, the stars we create as we gaze upon them, it indicates new beginnings, new light, new awarenesses as we continue to create worlds without end through our focus on them. Don't you find it interesting that we as a collective have even created more Hawaiian islands? They just found 3 new Hawaiian islands they haven't even named yet. Currently, they're only masses of lava rock, but the birds will do their part, and then before you know it, they'll be beautiful like all the rest of Hawaii. We all love Hawaii so much, it's no wonder that the focus of our attention on it has created more. Yay! I'm okay with that, aren't you? I'm part of that, aren't you? Yes, absolutely. The gifts of the Magi represent material provision in the gold. We are always provided for. Sometimes our awareness fails to realize it, acknowledge it, and offer appreciation for it, but we really are always provided for. It is only our awareness of our provision that is sometimes lacking. As we are aware and grateful for the fact that we are always provided for, it becomes our physical experience. Because everything in manifested form starts as an idea, a prompting, an intention. And then out of our divine creative capacity, we create the evidence that it is so. So the gold represents material provision. The Magi also brought frankincense, which indicates emotional fulfillment. Emotional fulfillment. When we're emoting about something, that is the energy welling up within us that actually creates it. Frankincense represents emotional fulfillment in this world. And myrrh represents our eternal essence, the spirit of who we really are. One of the traditions that I have grown very fond of and love in my path is the American Indian traditions, American Indian sweat lodges, and animal medicine. We learn so much by looking at animals. And of course, even the Bible is filled with verses referencing, as we look at nature, we see the glory of God. We see the character of God. So it's not a surprise. The animals that show up in the Christmas story. Cattle. We sing about the cattle are lowing, the baby awaits. How many of you have heard that one? Yes, we sing about the cattle. Cows have been represented in every spiritual tradition, no matter what scriptures you're reading, in every spiritual tradition, to indicate that we are provided for. They represent abundance and provision, because every part of the cow they have offered to us as energy that we can utilize in the cycle of life, and that is so to be honored. The cattle represent abundance and provision. Also, willingness, because the cow offers all of itself in the flow of the cycle of the energy of the universe. Sheep. Sheep represents that conformity to the norm is the predominant consciousness in egoic society. However, the innocence of the sheep and their willingness to follow the leader is also representative of the fact that as they follow the voice of the shepherd, that internal knowingness, following that voice of the shepherd, causes the sheep's skin to be very easily shed without pain, meaning shedding the ego while you are still alive because of your remembrance of your innocence. The sheep's skin is shorn very easily. It comes off easily as they realize how innocent they are. It represents how easily and painless it can be to let go of the thought of the ego and separation and remember who we are when we make that choice and set that intention. Also, because the sheep follow the leader, they follow that voice. The leader represents following that voice. Because they follow the leader, it also represents laying down the need to be right, laying down the need to be out front, laying down the need for significance and the craving for being significant. Because as they lay that down, they are able to be completely safe and whole in their ability to follow that voice. The donkey. The donkey is an amazing animal which kind of gets a bum rap in that people say it's a half-breed. Perfect representation of God and man in manifested form. The donkey is not only this marvelous half-breed, But also, it gets a bum rap for being stubborn, doesn't it? But you know what that stubbornness is? Because you cannot make a donkey go to some place that is unsafe. It will stop and be steadfast, following its internal knowingness, its intuition that that won't work, that won't serve us to go that way. The donkey's stubbornness represents steadfastly following your intuition, steadfastly following your internal guidance system. And the donkey's big ears represent our capacity to hear the ether, which in Ayurvedic science is the voice of God. The big ears representing we can always hear our internal guidance system. We're running out of time, or we have already. So I'll close with just simply this. There are so many more representations that the Christmas story shows us and reminds us who we really are. So let's celebrate the man Jesus, who showed us how to walk in remembrance of who we really are, God in manifested form. Come on, ring those bells, light the Christmas tree. Jesus is the key, born for you and me. Come on, ring those bells, everybody say, Jesus we remember on your birthday. This is our spiritual birthday we celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you for blessing us with your presence today and being a part of the Satya Center. You're invited to join Reverend Ali and Reverend Lyle each Sunday morning at 10 a.m. for your dose of connection, inspiration, and co-creation. The Satya Center is located at 795 24th Street, Ogden, Utah. For directions, a map, and our service times, please see our website, thesatyacenter.org. This program was brought to you by the kind donations from the members of the Satya Center. Thank you.